That new African is ready to fight his own battle and show that after all, the black man is capable of managing his own affairs.
Years before Nkrumah was telling the world, the black man is capable of taking care of his own affairs, Reverend Nicholas Timothy Clerk was telling the Basel Mission, the African is capable of running his own church. Before the Basel missionaries were expelled from the Gold Coast in 1917, Nicholas Timothy Clerk had already made it clear that the local clergy were capable of running the church as well or better. His drive for independence in the church was an inspiration for others. Eventually, his passion and vision for the independence of his church were aided by providence, and in 1918, a year after the Basel missionaries had been expelled from the Gold Coast, he was elected as the first synod clerk of the Presbyterian Church of the Gold Coast.
That was actually the beginning or something that dynamized the independence process of this country or of other African countries, because as the Africans began to take over the reins of authority within the church, it was clear that Africans could be in charge of their own destinies and in charge of their own affairs. And the political class also took it over, and today we have an independent country.
His story had begun a generation earlier with the arrival of his father, Alexander Worthy Clerk, a former slave to the shores of the Gold Coast. Alexander Worthy Clerk came back to Africa to preach the gospel and to educate his people, and from him came an illustrious line of preachers and educators. In January of 1835, the Omanhene of Ekuapem, Nana Addo Dankwa I, warmly welcomed the Basel missionaries to Ekropong.
When Andreas Ries visited Ekropong for the first time in 1835 and settled there between 1835 and 1840, he preached in the Ekuapem area, but the Ekuapem people, although they were very receptive to his stay, were not willing to convert to the Christian faith.
After 8 years of missionary work in the Gold Coast, they had been unable to convert a single native to Christianity or to baptize anyone. They had lost 80% of their members to sickness and premature death. They were now compelled to abandon their efforts and leave the Gold Coast. At the farewell Durbar held for them, the Omanhene had remarked,
When
God created the world, He made the book for the European and the fetish for the African.
So,
if you could show us some Africans who could read the Bible, then we would surely follow you. The missionaries took this advice to heart, and upon their return to Europe, they started looking for Africans who could read the Bible and were willing to come to Africa.
What Ekuapem said was actually the key that opened the door for the Basel mission. And it is true that when the West Indian Africans came to settle in Ekuapem, it was the beginning of the conversion of the Africans. When the Africans saw that, well, truly there were African Christians who read the Bible and lived by it, and they had a new way of living, and that essentially caused the people of Ekuapem to begin to convert to the Christian faith.
One of those who could read the Bible and was willing to come to Africa was Alexander Worthy Clerk. He was born in Manchester Parish, Jamaica in 1820. He had been emancipated from slavery at the age of 13. Emancipation and the funding of an English benefactor enabled him to study Christian theology and ministry at the Fairfield Teachers Seminary, a seminary which prepared young Jamaican men for Christian evangelism. Whilst there, he studied Christian theology and ministry, as well as German, Latin, and several other languages. He was one of 24 Jamaicans the mission recruited through a rigorous interviewing process. The thoroughness of the process was to make sure they would be able to endure the hardships they would meet. They were selected not only because of their strong sense of social mission, but more importantly, their Christian educational values. In February of 1843, they left Jamaica for the Gold Coast. At the tearful farewell service for them before leaving, they proclaimed, "When we go to Africa, we go not to a foreign country. Africa is our country and our home. Our grandfathers and great-grandfathers were taken from there and brought here. Our only prayer is that the eyes of the Africans, whom we regard as our brothers, may be opened to see Jesus Christ as Savior of the world." They arrived in the Gold Coast in April of 1843. After some initial homesickness, they adapted quickly, learning Twi and Ga and composing new hymns and translating old ones.
The significance of the West Indians goes beyond the issue of color or race. It goes into the several issues. For example, we see that the West Indians played a key role in the agricultural developments that the Basel missionaries brought to the Gold Coast. For example, that when they were coming, they brought a number of fruits and seedlings from Jamaica, which today have become part of the things that we call African or local staples. For example, cocoyam. Before they came, we used to eat what they call the brobe kind of cocoyam. Brobe or cocoa, depending on where you are coming from. They brought the Amankani variant of the cocoyam, which has become today a very local staple. They brought us the avocado. They brought us the yellow Bombay or the Mangifera indica variant of the mango, which today we call the local mango. Actually, it came from them. So, in terms of agriculture, they changed a few things. Some of them introduced how to weed. There were other social things they did. They sank wells. One of the wells that was sunk by the West Indian Africans was at Ebri, and it was sunk by one of them named Rochester. For many years, this well served the people of Ebri to the extent that it was called Jamaica. So today there is actually a section of Ebri called Jamaica, which is actually referring to the work of these Jamaican Christians.
Within a year of their arrival, Worthy Clerk and two other missionaries had set up an all-boys boarding school at Christiansburg, the Salem School. The early years of the school were difficult, but it was successful. This prompted the mission to send Worthy Clerk to Akropong to start a similar school, the United Akropong School, where he became the schoolmaster. In August of 1848, Worthy Clerk married Pauline Hesse, the daughter of Herman Hesse, a Uruguayan merchant, and his wife, Charlotte Lamiokai. Pauline had been educated at the Christiansburg Castle School in Osu. Worthy Clerk and Pauline had 11 children, of which Nicholas Timothy Clerk was the 7th child. His early education was in Akropong. From the Basel Mission primary and middle schools in Ebri, he then went on to the Mission Seminary at Akropong. Here he showed a keen interest in mission work in addition to pedagogy and theology. During his time at the Akropong Seminary, Nicholas Clerk was described as a sturdy lad who had inherited his father's intelligence and was by far the best student in the school. Nicholas Clerk proceeded to Germany to study German, Greek, Latin, and Hebrew under the tutelage of Johann Gottlieb Christoller, the first editor of the Christian Messenger in the Gold Coast. Christoller had been instrumental in the translation of the Bible into Twi, and whilst Nicholas Clerk was in Germany, he assisted Christoller in completing some of the works in Twi. Clerk then pursued further studies at the Basel Mission Seminary in Switzerland, where he now studied theology, linguistics, and catechism. In 1888, he was consecrated as a missionary in Basel, and soon afterwards ordained as a minister in Kontal, Germany. He returned to Ghana to start his mission work. In 1891, he married Anna Alice Meyer, the daughter of Reverend Karl Meyer, a Basel minister. His father, the Reverend Alexander Worthy Clerk, conducted the wedding ceremony. Anna Meyer had been educated at the Basel Mission Girls' School, a boarding school in Abukobi, and she was well prepared to live the life of a missionary wife. Even though the life of a missionary with family to support was not easy, Nicholas and Anna Clerk persevered, and together they had 9 children. Although they were well educated by all standards, the Home Committee in Basel never accorded Reverend Nicholas Clerk and other African missionaries the same status as European missionaries. The mission saw them more as administrative assistants than equals. The Home Committee insisted on making all significant decisions from Basel. This attitude was deeply resented by Nicholas Clerk and his compatriots, who felt the church administration should have more local decision-making tailored to the local context.
In the time of the Basel missionaries, if we were coming from Basel to Accra, it would take you close to 6 months. And the letter from Gold Coast requesting for the decision to be made would take maybe 4 months to get to Basel before a decision committee is put together to look at the matter, and the decision is made maybe within a month or 2, and then the decision is communicated to the Gold Coast. It takes another 4 to 6 months. So by the time the decision comes here, sometimes it is even stale. So the long distance was a problem. And if they had given more authority to the people who were here, I'm sure that things would have moved on faster than they did.
He communicated these feelings strongly to his European fellow missionaries, but he was ignored. Reverend Clerk had felt for a long time that the local church was capable of making decisions and handling the finances for its administration by itself.
One of the things about Nicholas Clerk was the fact that at a point in the late 1890s, he said that one African pastor told him that you are the one who can help us take charge of our affairs because of your education. And so clearly you will see that these were sentiments that were among the Africans. They wanted to take over, they wanted to handle their own church.
Mission affairs took a drastic change with the onset of the First World War. The Basel mission was expelled from the Gold Coast, and all the German missionaries had to leave. The colonial administration then invited the Free Church of Scotland to continue the work of the Basel missionaries. The Scots were Presbyterians, and they brought the Presbyterian way of church government with them. This created an opportunity for local missionaries to take charge of the mission administration. Even though they did not have much experience, they responded to the challenge. A synod committee was established and a synod clerk elected. Nicholas Clerk was elected as the first synod clerk, making him the chief administrator of the organization.
The office of the Synod Clerk has evolved with time. Presently, the Synod Clerk is basically more or less the executive secretary of the church. So he runs the administration of the church. And he makes sure that the wheels of the church's administration are properly oiled and communication is sent down all the various layers of the church's administration. It's a very, very important office. In some places, he is basically the head of the church.
As passionately as he had preached independence for the church, he also advocated self-reliance in administering the church. He refused to ask for funds to run the church from mission societies abroad, but instead insisted on the church living within its means.
The greatest contribution they made was in the area of church leadership, whether at the grassroots level or at the national level. And indeed, two of the second generation West Indians, Peter Hall, son of John Hall and Mary Hall, and then Nicholas Timothy Clerk, son of Alexander Worthy Clerk and his wife Pauline, became the first leaders of the Independent Presbyterian Church. So Nicholas Clerk became the first Synod Clerk, and Peter Hall became the first moderator of the Synod of the Church.
In his inaugural address, he passionately advocated for the establishment of a boys' secondary school. This advocacy led to establishment of the Presbyterian Boys Secondary School. Clerk Street in Osu and Reverend Nicholas Clerk Street in Wurawura are named after him for his services to the advancement of education in the Gold Coast. The school he advocated for, Presbyterian Boys Secondary School, one of the bastions of academic excellence, also named one of its boarding houses Clerk House after him. His son, Carl Henry Clerk, became the fourth Synod Clerk of the Presbyterian Church of the Gold Coast. His grandson, Nicholas Timothy Clerk, was a Presbyterian minister who served as the director of the Ghana Institute of Management and Public Administration. His great-grandson, Nicholas Timothy Clerk, is a renowned obstetrician. The patriarch of the Clerk family, Alexander Worthy Clerk, would be very proud of his descendants if he could see them today.